Thank you. I have undoubtedly there'll be a few more people joining. There's like about 104 people registered. Of course, they're not all going to come at any one time. And some won't come at all because they're in Germany. Although I do see Abu Hani from Nigeria. So he must be up very late. This class will take place the second Thursday of every month at the same time. And just the Zoom link that you have is going to be the permanent one. So just please keep it on your computer someplace safe where you can find it. Half the class will be something from Inayat Khan's teaching and my commentary on it. And half the class will be what I call Sobet, which is you adding your thoughts or questions. And the way that we would like to do that, it's really hard sometimes, but to go to your React section and hit the yellow raise hand. That way I can see that, in fact, you have a question or a comment. If you can't do that for whatever reason, then the next best thing would be to go to the chat section and write your question, and Shakti will find it and make sure I know that. Last, if you can't do that, is to raise your physical hand. I definitely will not see it, but maybe Shakti will, and let me know that you're trying to say something. I think that's all I wanted to say in terms of logistics. Shakti, did I miss anything? Okay, let's begin then with the invocation Piramersha gave us. Toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls, who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. Amen. The theme that I chose for today is impressions. And we are beset by impressions more and more, minute by minute these days, it seems. And a lot of times we don't know what to do with them. We just try to ignore them, but they weigh heavy on us at times. So, what did Inayat Khan teach us about impressions? He said, what is the message of Sufism? Sufism, the message of digging out that water like life which has been buried by the impressions of this material life. There's an English phrase, a lost soul. The soul is not lost, the soul is buried. When it's dug out, then the living life springs out like a spring of water. Bad impressions, however old and intimate, are like rubbish accumulated, which should be removed in order to make the house clean. The human heart is the home of the soul, And upon this home, the comfort and peace of the soul depend. Clearing impressions. Purity of mind requires the destroying of all bad impressions collected there or received at present. The mind is not only a means of thinking or reasoning, but the king of one's being. And upon the condition of the mind, one's health, happiness, and peace in life depend. Now the question is what to destroy and what to keep in the mind. Collect and keep all that's beautiful and destroy all that's void of beauty. Collect and keep all that's agreeable and destroy all that has a disagreeable effect upon you. Collect and keep all that's harmonious and destroy all that creates disharmony in yourself. Collect and keep all that's restful and destroy all that disturbs the peace of your life. Once a person's able to clear from his mind by whatever process undesirable impressions, a new power begins to spring from his heart, opening a way before him, attracting to him all he requires, and clearing from his path all obstacles, and making his atmosphere clear for him to live, move, and accomplish what he wants to accomplish. So he said it's important to remove the impressions by whatever means. And when I think about that myself, I remember what he said about beauty. And beauty is something that is unique to each of us. What is beautiful to me is not necessarily going to be beautiful to you, although it might be. But beauty is a reflection of one's soul at this moment. And one of the things that a spiritual wayfarer has for beauty is divine beauty, looking for something that's going to make him or her feel closer to the divine. One way of experiencing beauty is when you meditate, you may at times you close your eyes. An icon said you close your eyes as a psychological support to go inward. But if your meditate is deep, then when you stop and you're going to open your eyes, for a moment at least, there's a reluctance to open your eyes. And you might wonder, well, what is that reluctance about? And the feeling might be that, well, when I open my eyes, the objects of the outer world are going to draw me out of this experience. And why would that matter to you? Well, for one thing, you worked hard to get there. The second thing, it's beautiful to you. And you don't want to lose that sense of beauty. So there's a sense of beauty for the soul. But we'll have a couple of techniques tonight to help us with that. And the first one is the breath, how to use the breath in a way that clarifies the breath of the heavy impressions. We're going through life and we have encounter many kinds of impressions, and some of them are not so heavy, but some of them can be quite heavy, and they all affect the breath. So the first thing is to just close your eyes and be present to your breath. Just below your nostrils, the breath is coming in and going out. And can you sense that? Can you sense the breath flowing in and out of your nostrils? And if you can, that's what we would call a felt sense. Now, as you stay present to this felt sense of the breath, you can start to feel what we would call felt shifts in the breath. The breath changes. It changes, it becomes perhaps Well, it might become slower. And then another felt shift, it might be begins to be less dense. It starts to become lighter, lighter both in terms of weight, but also in terms of radiance. And then you might become aware of another shift where you become aware of the vibrations in the breath. And these vibrations are what Inayat calls the magnetism of the breath, the life of the breath. He says in Pasyanfas, breath is light and breath is life. And we can have a very direct experience of both those by being present to our breath. In the way, what is happening is the breath, under the radiance of your presence, is jettisoning anything that's been weighing upon it, any any heavy impressions. As you become aware of the vibrations of the breath, those of you who've meditated a long time and perhaps have experienced the electromagnetic field around your body, notice that it shifts and becomes reflective of the vibrations in the breath. And as a consequence, your body feels lighter and more energetic. It also affects your emotional field, which moves into a more harmonious flow. And affects the mind that Naikan was talking about. When the breath becomes radiant and vibrant, Inayat Khan says that when the molecules of the mind lose their magnetism, they disperse. That means you get spaced out. The consequence is equally true that once the molecules of the mind gain their magnetism, they come together. They become focused. The mind becomes quiet, clear, lucid. Now we're going to take the same breath full of light and life and cast it upon the heart and cast it upon Latifa Suri in the center of the breast and use it as a way of helping purify the heart of heavy impressions, clearing the dust from the mirror of the heart, as Rumi would say. So you breathe in, massage the Latifa Surya on the in breath. And you breathe out and massage it on the out breath. And this is you may remember the point on the breast where Inayat has his heart and wings on his, that's the area right above the cilia in the center of the breast. So that's where you would be breathing in and out, massaging that area from within. And the ancient ones likened this to breathing on the ember of the heart. And you know that when you blow on the ember, it begins to flare up and warm up. This area can warm up a little bit, and this is radiant discharge of impressions being released. It's similar to like maybe when you were young, your mother put Vicks on your chest to help decongest it. You felt a warmth as it penetrated. Also, the area begins to soften. Softening in this case is a subjective experience of the development of space. Where the particles leave the surface of the heart, there's nothing but space left. It's called softening. That's your experience of it. And you can now breathe into that space. On the in breath, penetrate. On the out breath, release more fully. And what happens when you stay present to the space, it begins to develop. It unfurls in all directions. It moves beyond the skin, traverses the physical body, but it's not of it. It traverses time and space, but it's not of that either. To see without a distant shore. Luminous art. It gives us a clue what Jesus meant when he said, "Come to me, those who are heavy burdened, and labor not, for my burden is light." Allow yourself to rest within the depth of the heart, this luminous ocean, sheer emptiness, and paradoxically sheer fullness. Amen. So these are things that one can do to help with the impressions of the day. We don't often do them because it takes time. We have to sit down, make space, disengage from the outer life enough to engage in the inner life, and allow ourselves to understand what's happening, that we have been caught up with all these impressions, and now it's time to release them. Just this week, I'm sure there were plenty of impressions. Every week, it seems like there's more and more. Now, I'm going to show you two other practices to do, but I have to say a few words about them first. The first practice we're going to do is Bismillah, and it's not the Bismillah, it's just simply reciting the word Bismillah. But before we do that, I want to share with you two things. Well, one is something that a very great Sufi, Abu Qadir Jalani, who was the founder of the Qadiri order, in which Inayat Khan was initiated. He was initiated in four orders: the Qadiri, the Chistiya, the Suwardi, and the Naqshbandi. And this is a saying from Abu Qadir Jalani about Bismillah and saying Bismillah. Bismillah is a treasure for those who remember, a mighty resource for the strong, a protective talisman for the weak, a radiant life for lovers, a joyful delight for those who are filled with yearning. Bismillah is the consolation of our spiritual natures. Bismillah is the salvation of our bodily forms. Bismillah is the light that illuminates our breasts. Bismillah is the organizing principle that regulates our affairs. Bismillah is the lamp of those who reach their destination. Bismillah is that which satisfies the need of ardent lovers. Bismillah is a phrase that brings a pleasant sensation to the mouth. The other thing I want to share, also from the Sufis that came before Inayat Khan, but I'm sure he was very deeply steeped in. When he came to the West, at first he taught like he was taught. Rashida Rabia Martin, if you read the letters between them, you can see that he taught her very, very clearly like he would teach somebody in the East. But over time, he assessed the mentality of the Western human and realized he needed to teach differently if he was going to have any effect. But in recapturing something that he brought with him and was part of his own formation, there's two words I'd like to share with you. The first one is dak, which means to taste God. And the second one is sharb, which means to drink God. Now, to taste God, thinking about all those, if you drink wine, you taste the wine. Someone says, well, do you taste the blackberry in it or the vanilla? And you might look around with your tongue and finally taste, oh, I think I do, yeah. First, you have kind of, it's in the imaginal realm, but then it becomes quite clearly sensory and you definitely taste it. Well, tasting, like Abu Qadir Jalani pointed out, he was tasting Bismillah. All those phrases were ways of describing the wine of Bismillah for him. Bismillah means to begin in the name of God. So if we're going throughout the day and we lose our way, Abakar Chilani said, Bismillah is the lantern for those who reach their way. So we can recite Bismillah to help remove the burdens from our breath and from our breast. It removes the burden from our breath because we're articulating it on our breath. It removes the burdens from our breast because we're going to taste and find the beauty, which they would call the secret of Bismillah. So to do that, you have to pause. To taste means to actually to be present to what's present in your heart after you recite. So there's an articulation, but then there's a presence. So I'm going to teach that right now. Bismillah. Taste. Bismillah. Bismillah. And then to drink is just to be quiet and allow that which is present in your heart to penetrate and deeply inform your being. When I say inform, it is the Sufis talk about our inner form. It's the states of consciousness that flow through our heart and through our mind, which is the surface of our heart, Inayat says. So to inform is to constantly bring new information, new forms within our own being. So not only does this help you in terms of lightening the impressions in your mind, your heart, but it also helps you by bringing you into a deeper resonance with the divine in your daily life. And I only said that 3 times. It doesn't take a lot you don't have to actually even go anywhere, wherever you are. Another phrase that I often use is Allahu Akbar. And Allahu Akbar, we've watched all these movies, so we think of people running down a hill on horses with swords in their hand. But Allahu Akbar, from the Sufi point of view, means God is ever greater. So whatever your conception of God is, whatever your knowing of God is, God is ever greater. So it keeps all of us humble. It keeps us also clear. And it keeps us oriented toward the divine in all of its many modes of self-disclosure. So again, I articulate the word and then I taste it. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. And then I drink. I allow that which is present in my heart to penetrate and deeply inform my being. I found those two phrases to be incredibly useful on a day-to-day basis. I don't always remember them, but when I do, I find them quite useful. Even one time I was getting an MRI. I don't know if you've ever been in an MRI machine, but first off, you're very claustrophobic. You're all tight. And then there's all these wild noises, the clanging and all kinds of noises. And the first time I had it, I felt like it was Chinese torture. But then I started to recite divine name, and it worked. All the heavy impressions disappeared. So I give you that as a clue if you ever have to have an MRI machine. Make sure you go in armed with the divine, and it'll help it be a much more relaxing experience. Now, the next thing is I'll do a zikr with you very briefly. and and this particular zikr is a way of cleansing the heart. Rumi said, well, the recitation of divine names and the zikr is the soap and water that washes the heart. So we will do this as a way of cleansing. So it's Allah ana illa anta. La and then ana, A-N-A, L-A, and then new word, A-N-A, and then illa, I-L-L-A, anta, new word, A-N-T-A. La ana, there's no I, illa anta, only thou. Now, of course, the reality is that if there's no I, who's reciting the zikr? If there's no I, of course there's an I. But the way I have worked that particular conundrum was, well, it's making more and more room in my heart for the divine beloved. Anta means thou. So there is no I, there's only thou. Well, it's giving over as much space in my heart as I can for the thou. We're having a thunderstorm here. I don't know if you can hear it. So, but anyway, starts at the left shoulder and you go across the solar plexus. Now, the solar plexus is your Kaaba. The Kaaba is the stone and the temple around it. And the one thing that the prophet did, the first thing he did when he won the holy war with his companion was he removed all the idols out of the Kaaba. So as we sweep across our own solar plexus, we just release any of the tensions, any of the heaviness, anything of the burdens of the day. Just let them go. It's like sweeping them out from the depth of yourself. La ana. Now there's two aspects of God. One is tanza, which means the It means transcendent, the transcendent aspect of God. But the other is tasbih, like the beads that you. Tasbih means the immanent aspect of God. So la ana is concentrating on the transcendent aspect of God. And then illa in the solar plexus, which has now been swept clean, like, the Vestal Virgins cleaned the room for the master who was to come. Illa, anta in the space of the heart. And that is the immanent aspect of the divine. So we can get to taste both and experience the beauty of both. And this washes away the burdens of our life, the heavy impressions. La, ana, il, anta, taste, la, ana, il, anta, la, ana, il, anta. Drink. I mean, I just like to say just one more thing and then open it up to Sobit. Well, two more things. The first thing is, I'm sure at some point you've either been in the gym or you've been out working in the field or you've been running, jogging, something, and you've gotten dehydrated. And then you drink some water. Every cell in your body starts to dance with joy. so it gets rehydrated. That's like life and spirit. St. John of the Cross in the Dark Night of the Soul said he reached a moment he could only call it arid. And we all can reach that moment from time to time. And it's spirit that rehydrates us. Quite literally. It's not an idea. As long as it's an idea, it's not happening. But when you take the time to taste and drink, then you will get rehydrated. And the last thing I wanted to say is in the space of the heart, one can get to a place where it's a felt refuge. You can actually experience that space as a refuge from the daily life that's been oppressing. And it's a place of freedom and creativity. Normally, we would be doing spiritual practices to get closer to God, but I wanted to point out, and or to find out our true nature, to discover our true nature, which is perhaps the same thing. But I wanted to point out its practical application and the wear and tear of everyday life. Particularly, it struck me because these last 10 years have gotten worse and worse and worse as far as heavy impressions go, all over the place. So I've recognized that this is a great need, how to stay afloat, or even better than that, how to fly and not be captured by the heaviness of existence. I don't know if that made sense or not, but anyway, that was today's lessons on impressions. So now we'll enter Sobet. Do you have any comments or questions? Adi.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment um, that when we do the breath exercise, and before we cast it down into our my heart, this is my experience. Um, the vibration in my skull becomes very great. It's not unpleasant. It's actually a really pleasant feel, uh, and it seems to, for me, it's like it has a capacity. And it's like when it gets full of, to the capacity, it's like you need to go ahead and cast this down into your heart. And when I do, I find that that energy or the breath that the heart receives, it can contain that which my skull can't contain. It's like the heart is an endless well that it has no full capacity. It just absorbs and absorbs and absorbs and becomes boundless. It doesn't appear to have any type of capacity like the breath in the skull. I hope I'm making sense, but that's been my experience, and it's a beautiful experience to know that the heart can contain a lot more. than my brain or the mind or whatever I want to call it up there.
Yes, it can. And one of the things that we need to recognize, and that Khan teaches the heart is open to the impressions of everyday life, and it's open to the impressions of the heavens. So what we're hopefully doing is opening it to the impressions of the heavens in everyday life. Nurallah.
Hi. Um, you mentioned the two aspects of God being transcendent and immanent.
Yeah.
Could you speak more on the distinction and of the two?
Yes. Well, in the first place, if Allahu Akbar means God is ever greater, then that's really emphasizing the transcendent. Uh, there's aspects of the divine that simply defy the strictures of the mind. We can't really grasp the divine through thinking. So we could go a lot more into that, but the bottom line is that whenever we are thinking of God, we usually think of God in relationship to ourself or in relationship to the world, and that is an immanent aspect of God. That's a God that comes into your heart. That's a God that flows through the blossoms in the springtime. That's a God that moves the waves of the ocean. When you read Inayat Khan's nature meditations, that's all about the immanence of God. He talks about the trees, he talks about the mountains and so forth, the stars and flowers and human beings. And it's an infinitely creative expression. It's always unique. So on one hand, the transcendent spheres go beyond anything we can ultimately comprehend. The immanent allow us to comprehend that there is something that's relevant and meaningful to us.
Thank you.
But in a way, the transcendent is also relevant and meaningful, particularly in this discussion tonight about impressions and heaviness of life. That which can lift us out of that which is beyond it. Oh, Dan, how did you get? So, I have people that didn't even register. Welcome.
Thank you. I didn't know about it till last night, actually. So, um, my question on impressions, the piece that you opened up with about an icon saying to get rid of all bad impressions and keep those which are beautiful or are harmonious or whatever. Um, in the Zarat papers, in one of the lessons, he talks about getting rid of all impressions, and he's specific about good and bad both. And I've thought for years how, presumably, with the Zarat papers, it was one of the probably most latter teachings he gave. And it was also for a targeted audience. It wasn't like general public or even just to Murids and Seren or something, but it was to his most advanced Murids. So my thought is, when you were talking about a couple minutes ago, heavenly impressions and mundane impressions, um, do you think it's more of an advanced teachings to still get rid of all impressions, like polishing the heart, the rust, as well as even an imperfection that might catch a nice glint of light, but even that has to go? Or was he still talking about maybe in a more earthly sense of good and bad?
No, um, going back to Abakar Jalani, who I quoted earlier, he said, even the divine names, the light of the divine names is a veil upon the divine essence. So that's a very advanced teaching. That means we do the divine names and we taste the divine names and we allow the divine names to move us and be blossom within us. And is the the Prophet Muhammad said, characterize yourself with the divine characteristics. And Inayat Khan says in his book on personality to develop the personality. So
Thinking about taking them. I'm thinking about taking them.
I don't know what's happening. Takini, I think you might be on. So anyway, um, so that would be ultimately a very advanced stage. Beauty is, as I said earlier, is in the eye of the beholder, and our sense of beauty changes based on our makam from where we're looking. So at one time when we were a child, something was beautiful. When we were an adolescent, something else was beautiful. And young adults, something else was beautiful. And some of us older adults, something else is beautiful. But even beyond chronological age, as we begin to be more subtle in our perception, beauty takes on new forms. But whatever it is, beauty leads us forward. So one of the things that um, I'm often think about is the word ishq, because it's really core to the purpose of what a human being is all about. God, the Hadith Qudsi, God said, I was a hidden treasure and wished to be known. And that desire to be known, and desire is ishq. So it's a great force of creative force, and it's oriented to beauty. So ishq takes us from one beauty to the next. And we're impressed by those beauties. And then we move on and let them go to the next. Bakia.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam, Bakia.
Can you can you tell us where the quotes that you shared are from? What papers or texts? The pieces that are on the
Well,
awakenings.
I will have to go back and find them. I was thinking somebody like you would ask that question,
Sorry.
but I
Yes.
I didn't do that.
Okay.
I took them. What I have is, and you probably could have that too, is the data bank search for Hazrat Khan.
Yes. The
And
library, the study library.
no, it's on the website. It's
Mhm.
got its own place. Oh,
Okay.
maybe it is a study library. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what they call it. I can look there too. Thank you. Um, but my question is really about I've been pondering this or sitting with.
Well, let me just finish that.
Oh, yes, sorry.
So if you just took one of the phrases and put it in the search, then it'll immediately take you to the text.
Okay, good. Thank you. Um, I've been sitting with this phrase. It must be from one of his papers, but it's also in the aphorisms about independence and indifference being the two wings that allow the soul to fly freely or be in freedom. I feel that I'm at a stage where I'm beginning to taste what that might mean in this life that is so full of impressions, and where we where I am so drawn in so many different directions. And it's, sometimes a very beautiful experience, sometimes a somewhat alienating experience. Sort of walking that line between not wanting to feel detached, but wanting to taste that freedom of the soul. But I wonder if you could speak to cultivating those two qualities in the way that Inayat Khan is referring to them in relationship to being in family life and in other spaces where we're quite interdependent. I experience, I feel myself slightly resistant to the idea of independence when it comes to being a mother. And so sharing in like interdependence and what I would call like co-regulation of my, body and my soul and my nervous system with my kids and my spouse. Yeah. So how do you see those two things of the interdependence of family and other areas of life, and also cultivating this independence and indifference? Thank you.
Well, that particular teaching comes from the heart of the sannyasin in India. And we are not sannyasin. We may, but even sannyasin usually were householders first, took care of their family and their responsibilities to community, and then became sannyasin. That is not really where we're at these days, but even so, the child is born to the mother and they're one. But at a certain point, and it's usually when the child can say no to the mother, the no to the mother is the yes to the child. So the child is saying yes to itself. I want this. No, I'm not going to do that, or whatever. That is, we call that the beginning of individuation, but that is also separation, becoming a solitary creature in a way, coming back again into the field of the mother. One never really leaves the field of the mother completely, but which may or may not give mothers a great deal of satisfaction. I can't say, but to a high degree, the successful child does become an entity unto themselves, not just a copy of their mother or their father. Each of us has our own unique predispositions, which must blossom if we are to blossom. So our children may end up completely different than us when they're finally done with it. It's highly likely. So I think that it's important to enjoy life as a human being and to take on the responsibilities of parenting if you wish and you feel called. And part of parenting is letting go at the end, still supporting, but letting go. In a good relationship, whether it's with a spouse, I think, or a child, there is a sense of relative detachment. So there's a sense of freedom inside. And freedom can lead us to a place of creativity instead of reactivity, activity instead of reactivity. So with our children and our spouse, we can be free and creatively relating and not just reacting and responding. That's the best I'm going to do right now, Bakia. So, some of us have been on this path for half a century or more perhaps. What I introduced and said is probably so elementary. We'll get to the advanced class later. Tirana.
Just what Bakia was talking about, like, brings up something that Hazrat Inayat Khan said that I've heard many times and try to remember when I'm in the thick of things, is to be in rhythm with life's conditions and in tune with the infinite at the same time.
Well, that's a great aspiration.
Yes, it is.
so,
I have plenty of work to do.
well, you don't have to call it work, but I suppose it is. You know, in our hearts, I think that you will find that you are more attuned to the infinite than you consider yourself. It's a natural attunement. It's what's brought you to this place so far. It's not something that ever completely is done. It's not like we reach the perfect attunement to the infinite, but we are attuned to the infinite, or we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here tonight. You could certainly spend yourself time doing something else if you weren't feeling some kind of deep attunement, a deep call that's beyond our everyday, theoretically beyond our everyday life. It really isn't beyond our everyday life. That's where the saying, a dervish brings a living God right into the marketplace. The first Sufi I met in Rome, Italy, and he was in a four-piece suit, and he was introduced as the ex-finance minister of his country and the newly appointed chairman of the International Monetary Fund. And he was a Sufi, and he was talking about his inner life and this call to be attuned to the infinite. And he was a bean counter, and he was a man who dealt with power and politics all at the same time. I was amazed. Majid.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to share something that came to mind when you were answering Nurulah's question about transcendent and immanent. It helped me a lot when I'm pretty sure it comes from Ibn al-Arabi, that he used the terminology, the essence and the divinity. And he says about the essence, nothing can be said. And the divinity, as you were saying, is the face of God with which we interact. And having learned that, I sort of came to think of the names that we work with out of the Quran and whatever other sources as being aspects of the divinity. And as I recall, several of them, like Ahad and Samad and one or two, maybe three or four others of those names, are the non-comparable names, or the names that belong only to the essence. And Ibn al-Arabi says, or maybe it was Rumi, says, you you can say nothing about the essence except it is not this, it is not that, and that sort of thing. So to me, transcendent and immanent are kind of abstract terms, and essence still is, but you sort of have a sense of what's the essence of something. And the divinity is what we worship. So it's maybe a fine nuance of a different way of saying the same things, but it's one that's helpful to me, and I just wanted to reflect that as an additional part of an answer to Nurulah's question.
Thank you. Ananda?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I guess I'm asking a follow-up question to your story, Hamayat, about the bean counter at the International Monetary Fund. And part of the reason I'm asking is, we're living in these times where there are a lot of illusions that we're presented with, and sometimes we feel called to take action in these times. And some of us, I think, are called to um, um, get more involved, take certain actions. And so you had talked about this person who was involved in power and politics, and you said you were amazed. So I just wondered if you could say a little more about that.
No, all I could say is I was like 22 at the time. I was, I was looking. I had read the Carlos Castaneda book, so I was looking for the great man. I thought it'd probably be a Huichol shaman or something. I was amazed to find a man who uh, was right in the depth of this world and speaking very clearly about his inner life. I was quite impressed. I thought that is what a human being should be.
Thank you.
As I say, I was 22. Taja Lee. I
You have
can't
to
hear
unmute.
you. You have to unmute yourself.
It's in the lower left-hand side.
When you were doing La'ana Illa Anta, I couldn't hear if it was Ilanta or Illa Anta. I'm used to saying the Illa Anta, but I thought maybe I've been doing it wrong. So is it Illa Anta or Illanta?
Illa, you've been doing it right,
Illa, okay.
Taja Lee.
Thank you. And then my other question is, I have like this very strong resistance to the idea of giving up beauty, or like, impressions of beauty, and all impressions have to go. And I'm thinking, my impressions are so beautiful. I don't really want to give those up, but I mean, if I have to, I have to. But I'd rather keep them.
Okay, by all means, put him in a treasure
Thank
chest.
you.
So, yeah. The Sufi also is in love with beauty. Every paragraph has the word beauty in all the poetry of the Sufis. So the Sufis are in love with life. It's a great blessing.
There is a request that you add the phrase that you shared about Bismillah, and I'm going to share now in the chat bar here. the page that we created where the videos will live, and any extra papers or anything that Himayat will share with all of us.
I will put that on I will
Oops.
yeah, I'll put that paragraph on the page, and then you can post it. It's clear Avocado Jelani, who's a very great soul, had a great appreciation for taste. One of the things that, and I can't speak for, I'm not too familiar with the Zarat papers, to be truthful. I can't speak for what Dan was saying completely. But it's very much like a high yogic practice. My understanding of Sufism is that we are in a constant journey, an eternal journey. There's a story Ibn Arabi tells of a great soul who had all these incredible experiences and was approaching the end of life, but still had some time to live. But he thought, well, now I can perhaps put my pilgrim staff down. And then God said to him, not so quick. We have more to discuss. So we think that I don't know what we think, but the concept is well, get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of this, get rid of that. But ultimately, when you leave this world, according to the mystics, you'll enter another world where you have this, that, and the other thing as well. The question really is, and it's not something I'm really great at myself, but to figure out how to be free internally while dealing with the situations of life here. And I think that the concept of tanza and immanence is a very good one to hold, because tanza is ultimately free of everything, and immanence is ultimately involved with everything. So it's not an either or, it's an and. Basira, like you have to unmute yourself, Basira.
Thank you. One of my first Gotha classes many years ago, she was talking about, the teacher was talking about impressions, as in the way you can take it in, about, usually that would be involved with like your ego. It could be an impression you carry with you because somebody makes some comment, perhaps even about your practices or yourself, and that gets to be subtle. At the time, the teacher was talking about don't allow yourself to be impressed, but I'm not sure one cannot allow that. And it seems like the kind of releasing of impressions that we practice tonight has to do with dumping out stuff from the outer world, but it seems like it's probably a more difficult process to discern the impressions you may be carrying internally, if that makes sense.
Well, it does make sense. I mean, we all carry, it seems like we all have core issues to deal with, life issues from birth or even before birth to now. We're still chewing at them. So there are certain things that we didn't talk about tonight in terms of something that might be more therapeutically oriented. Uh, One of the things about impressions that struck me as you were talking is I used to be involved with the healing order for several decades. The healer wishes to impress the client with all possibility, the possibility of life, the possibility of well-being, the possibility of peace, the possibility of healing. So the healer is definitely, in many ways, impressing the person just by their very being. And I would hope that that person might take that in if it's true. If the healer is bringing greater life, if the healer is bringing greater possibility, I certainly would hope that the person that is ailing would take that in. Uh, there are times, even with our children, where they say something that really needs to be heard and is said in such a remarkably innocent way, and it impresses us deeply. And we should probably take that in. The same about our spouse or our beloved. So it isn't that there's something wrong with impressions. That's not the point of my class tonight. It's to not be burdened by them, to allow yourself to have a feeling of refuge, a place of inner freedom. Even the issues that might be more what you would call traumatic in the flesh, in the nervous system, in the psyche, there's still a place for freedom, refuge, in terms of staying present to those things in a way that's non-judgmental, allowing healing to take place, a lot of softening. So there's a certain wisdom in knowing how to deal with impressions. And Abhakar Jelani can say, well, even the light of the divine names holds a veil over the divine essence. Well, that's very good, but many of us are trying to get to the light of the divine names. So before we worry about the other, let's enjoy the light of the divine names. There'll be plenty of time, if not here, in the hereafter, to go beyond. Salima, did you raise your hand? Unmute yourself.
I hope I can not lose my thought. Presence, you talked about presence tonight, and you talked about impressions, and it seems to me, I'm just sort of saying this to burn it into my own psyche, maybe, but being present to impressions, to our well, our sins, if you will. Um, Being present to those things is similar to what you were talking about tonight, of being delivered, if you will, of those impressions. And it just kind of strikes me that the part of practicing presence um, is a way to include, accept everything, let's say, about us, for a place to start. So I'm just kind of making a connection. I hope it's somewhat understandable between being present and between being present um, and dealing with impressions.
Well, there's no judgment in presence. It simply is. The word sin is often heavily weighted with judgment. I like to use the word sin as an archer would use it, which means to be off the mark. In that case, you use the sin to lead you to the mark. I mean, an archer looks around, why did I miss the mark?
Mhm.
And ignoring or getting rid of the fact that I missed the mark isn't going to improve things. I'll still keep missing the mark. So what's going on here that I missed it? The wind? Is it the way I held the bow? Is it my wrist? Is it my thumb? Is it the string? Is it the arrow? What is it that is creating this situation? Presence allows us to look at that in a way that isn't really heavily judgmental. Of course, there's a certain amount you can say, well, we're trying to hit the bullseye, so I didn't hit the bullseye, but it's just simply admitting I didn't hit the bullseye. So what do I need to do that? And there's different ways of presence. One presence is, as I said, being present to what is present in your heart. So we're reciting the divine name. You could say that recitation or zikr is often, you could call it a supplication. You could call it a calling to the divine. One time I was in a retreat. I was doing a retreat and I started to do zikr, and a voice came and said, that's too loud. And so then I started doing fikr, which is the zikr on the breath. And the voice said, that's too loud. I said, well, I have 10 more days. What am I supposed to do? It said, well, be present to it. If you call the friend and the friend comes, why do you keep calling? I had this image of when I was a little boy, next door, there was a little boy up on the second floor who had polio, and he had braces on his legs. And I would go out on the sidewalk and call up, and either his mother would open the window and say he was either going to come down or he can't come down today. So that image came to me. Well, this voice was saying it's too loud. So if the friend comes, why not be with the friend? Why do you keep calling? That made sense to me. So there's another presence that comes into your heart. We call that the divine presence. Be with the divine presence. I'm gonna I'm gonna quote Abba Qadir Jalani one more time, and I'll put that also on the thing. But I gotta find it first. I call this the levels of remembrance. Abakar Jalani says there are different levels of remembrance. Remembrance, Zikr means to remember. Each has different ways. Some are expressed outwardly with an audible voice. That's what we've done today, this evening. Some are felt inwardly, silently, from the center of the heart. Hopefully, we did that a little bit. It's called tasting. At the beginning, one should declare in words what one remembers. Then, stage by stage, remembrance spreads throughout one's being, descending to the heart, then rising to the soul. Then, still further, it reaches the realm of the secrets, further to the hidden, to the most hidden of the hidden. How far the remembrance penetrates, the level it reaches, depends solely on the extent to which God in His bounty has guided one. And I'd also say, in the capacity one has through being prepared to receive. But the main thing about that particular quote from Abul Qadir Jilani is there are different levels to remember, to zikr. There's different levels to reciting divine names. It isn't just recite and then go home. The articulation is one level, but then there's another level. And then if you're quiet and patient and capable, there's another level. I share that because often people are not told that. They said, let's just do 1,001 zikrs. And there's a power to doing 1,001, and particularly in a group. But there's also a power in maybe just doing 5 and being present. Does that make sense? I hope so. We'll meet the second Thursday of every month. I don't have any sense of when I'm going to stop. I haven't led a class on a Inayat in a long time, so it could be a while. Let's end with a supplication He gave us 7 times. Pour upon us thy love and thy light. And you know, Arabic words, we think we've gotten to this place where we believe there's a magic to Arabic words. There's some power in an Arabic word, and we feel it. We in the dances we feel it. When we recite it, we feel it. But in truth, there's a power to every word. So you can feel the essence of those words, whether they're English or Arabic. Pour upon us thy love and thy light. 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 Amen. Thank you for being with us this evening. May the rest of this evening or day be a blessed one for those of you and for those around you.